Addison, Illinois, 1958. A young girl went shopping, telling her grandmother she needed to go look for a blouse. This was the last time her family saw her. This is a story of Bonnie Leigh Scott. Bonnie Leigh Scott goes missing September 22nd, 1958, not September 2nd. Enjoy the episode. Hello, good evening. Welcome back to Kelly's Coffee and Crime Chat. This is Kelly, and I am here to bring you another true crime case. Now, this one will be up early for subscribers, but will appear on my podcast Friday, the 8th. I'm going to upload or publish it on Friday, but for Spotify subscribers and Patreon, it's going to go up tonight, which is Tuesday, December 6th, right? The 5th, sorry. Tuesday, December 5th. Gotta get my day right. I am drinking Java Mama white chocolate raspberry truffle. This is one I've never had. It is in our 12 days of coffee, and it is very good. It's very good. I for some reason, I don't know. I wasn't sure if I'd like it, but it is a very good coffee. 12 days of coffee makes a very great gift for yourself or for a friend or family member. Java Mama's clean and green, air roasted, better for your gut, so you get the taste of the whole bean and not the roaster. Also available in K-cups, so you get ground, whole bean, or single, which are the cups for the Keurig machine or any other machine that you have that you can use them for. So, I am bringing you episode 74, which is a shock. I say that every time that I have this many episodes. My sources are AmericanHauntingsINK.com and idnc.library.illinois.edu and www.worthpoint.com. That's Worth, W-O-R-T-H, point.com. Okay. This is a name that I have not heard of, but she's come up. Her name has come up because she was linked to another famous murder. At the end of this, if I can remember, I'm going to recommend... Oh, I have it written down. There is a book, and I will recommend that at the end. Okay, this is Bonnie Leigh Scott. Now, Bonnie Leigh Scott lived in Addison, Illinois, and she was a sophomore at York Community High School. Now, her parents were going through a divorce, so she lived with her aunt and uncle, and they are Jean and Robert. I cannot pronounce their last name, so I'm not even going to try. It's S-C-H-W-O-L-W. Their daughter, 15-year-old Sue, and her grandmother, who is her mother's mom. So it's her maternal grandmother, Doris Hitchens. And she worked as a babysitter and of children in her area, and they lived in a nice, quiet community. So she was a regular babysitter of the children in her community. And there was a time that she took off with one of her friends and spent the weekend in the city. Now, I would have done that as a young girl. I know she's a sophomore in high school. You're too young to be doing that, but she spent the weekend in the city, and then she skipped school every once in a while. So she was a little bit, maybe, I don't know if I would say wild, but at that time, that was just something that it was just more like the rebellious side a little bit. This was on September 2nd of 1958. She told her grandmother she needed to look for a blouse, and she was going to go shopping. Well, This was about the last time they saw her. She never came home. And when they contacted police, the police thought she was a runaway because of her past, of always, taking off. And, not always taking off. I mean, she did it once in a while, but, they actually came in contact with some teenagers who saw Bonnie at a diner around 7:30 that night. And that was on September 22nd. She was also seen shopping at a store that was next to the police station. And that was the last time that was known that anybody had seen her. Now, I don't know why now I need to get my facts right on the date. For some reason, I think this is a mistake. I said here that it was September 22nd, but it was actually September 2nd, which I wrote down at the very beginning of this. The next day, a man called Bonnie's house. Now, he told her aunt that he got a couple calls about a guy who fought with Bonnie. And her aunt, this was her Aunt Jean. Well, she called the police about it because it just seemed odd, Well, this man who called was 23-year-old Charles Melquist. And he told a police detective this exact same story. He said he got a call at 8:15 p.m. And he said that Bonnie hung up after he said that it was her problem, what he was telling him. And then he also claimed he claimed to be friends with Bonnie. And she had called him because she was needing a ride or something. It was some story about she needed a ride and she was stranded and she needed him to come pick her up. And that's when he hung up, said it's her problem. And then he said that he regretted saying that now because she went missing. But he said that she thought of him as a big brother. Now, the second phone call that this guy got was around 11 o'clock that same night from some guy who said that Bonnie got out of his car and because they had an argument. And he wanted Charles to come and get her. So, okay, this sounds similar. Okay, it sounds like two people, but why are they both calling him? But instead of calling like her parents, you think she would call home or something. But Charles went to the area, and this area was near Route 66 and Mannheim Road. That's, if I'm saying that right, Mannheim. But she wasn't there. So detectives had Bonnie's small address book, and they were looking up all the names in it. They questioned about 38 young guys. 2 of them were given polygraphs. Now, nothing came of this, so the case went cold. They couldn't find anything else. Now, on November 15th of 1958, a group of Boy Scouts were hiking in the Argonne woods, Forest Preserve. And they found a nude body of a young female. She had been decapitated. And this location was a few miles from where the Grimes sisters were found a couple years before. And the Grimes sisters was a very high-profile case back then. 2 young girls who disappeared on their way to the movie theater. And that's when the same place and the area reminded them of this murder. This young female had been stabbed many times with a large knife. Her clothes were nowhere to be found, and she was Bonnie Lee Scott. Now, investigators were very interested in this Charles because of it being Bonnie's quote-unquote friend. And Charles heard that they were looking for him, so he went to the station on his own at 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday night. He sat down with detectives. They went over his statements, and they let him go. They told him he was not a suspect, but in fact he was. They were impounding his car just as he was talking to detectives. Charles was brought in again the next day. He told them the exact same story, so detectives figured he had memorized it, because it must have been like right to a T, like the same words, the same everything. Charles took 2 polygraphs. First one, he bombed it, just failed it horribly. So they took him for the second test, they took him to the office of a polygraph expert and police consultant. Now, I don't know if it was because they wanted to make sure, there was, with somebody else there, maybe that the test would be given, like there wouldn't be anything wrong with it, I'm not really sure about back then how accurate the polygraphs were in the 50s. I had to take a drink of coffee there. So on the way to take the second test, Charles said to one of the detectives, quote unquote, "The jig is up." He failed the second test, and right after this, he wrote a 7-page confession and was booked for murder. Now, talk was going around, especially after the newspapers came out about him confessing to Bonnie Lee Scott's murder. And as people talk, more info came out about his history and his contact with Bonnie plus other girls. He had a history of making obscene phone calls and stalking. One girl claimed Charles tried to choke her in his car. 2 other girls had said this also about him when they were out on dates with him with it. He tried to choke them. The day after his confession, Charles reenacted the murder of Bonnie, saying he killed her in his driveway in Villa Park. He said it was an accident, that he smothered her with a pillow. That was just an accident. They were just goofing around, put a pillow over someone's face. It's just a joke. Yeah. So he accidentally smothered her. So he stuck her clothes under his car seat and dumped her body. Now he kept returning to the place where he dumped her body, making sure she was still there, because he said he just couldn't believe that it was even true. He just couldn't believe he did that. He couldn't believe it was happening. So he would go back and see if she was still there. 3 weeks later, he returned to dig a grave. But I guess instead of going through with digging the grave, I don't know if that got too hard or what the deal was, so he decapitated her. He cut her head off. And he said he got rid of the knife and her clothes in the woods. And from what I read, these were never found. And after this confession, he got an attorney, and then he denied his confession. Claimed he was hypnotized into confessing by one of the detectives or whoever it was that they hypnotized him. Okay, his trial was April of 1959, and Charles took the stand saying he was under a hypnotic spell. He was found guilty by a jury on May 2nd. June 12th, Charles Melquist was sentenced to 99 years in Joliet prison. But he only served 11 years. He was paroled and got married and had 2 kids. How he only served 11 years, I don't know. I don't understand that. Why are you sentenced to 99 years in Joliet prison and then you only serve 11? I don't know if he got out. Well, it says he was paroled. How can you be paroled that fast? I mean, I don't know. Maybe because I know back then they didn't have DNA. They weren't good at getting proof that he actually did it. But, yeah, he had 2 kids. Died in 2010. I never found out what he died of. Now, like I said before, he had been linked to the Grimes sisters' murders, and that happened in January of 1957. There is a book about this. It's called The 2 Lost Girls. Troy Taylor is the author, and I might look at that on Thrift Books. I get a lot of really good used copies cheap on thriftbooks.com, and that's a recommendation if anybody's looking for anything like that. The book of The 2 Lost Girls is about the Grimes sisters, and Bonnie Lee Scott kind of went into the, how do I want to say it? When something overshadows, they kind of go by the wayside. Because the Grimes sisters was so investigated that they just thought this girl had the same killer as they did. So I think that the Grimes crime murders, I think, was proven that it was not Charles Melquist. And I think I got that from other podcasts and other news currently. I was going to look up the Grimes sisters and see if it was, but I did not want to bring that one in. The Grimes sisters murders is very high profile. It can be heard on a lot of different podcasts, and I wanted to cover Bonnie Lee Scott because she has not been talked about as much. A lot of people has not heard of her, but so that's why I wanted to talk about her. The Grimes sisters had a lot of theories, a lot of different suspects, and it's a very complicated case. It's a very good case, so I do recommend to look for a podcast. And one that I heard this crime on is a podcast called Morbid, which I really like. I've always liked them. They did this recently, and I've heard it on a couple other ones. I don't know if Going West has done it, but Going West is one of my all-time favorite podcasts. So I'm not sure if they've done it. It seems like they have, but it is something else. It is a very complicated case. It's pretty popular. It was popular back then. It was really big because it took so long to find somebody who did it. And like I said, I'm not sure if it's solved. I kept thinking it was, but now I'm not sure because there were so many theories. I don't know if there was anything really proven on who killed these girls. But these two do sound similar. They sound like similar cases. So that's my recommendation, The Two Lost Girls, and I am planning on looking that up. And I am going to correct myself on when Bonnie Lee Scott went missing, if it was September 2nd or 22nd. Sometimes I get to writing and I miss something, so I want to look that up and I want to correct it. So I'm going to put a correction on here and I'm going to try to fit it in before the podcast starts. So I really want to get my facts right on this. So, as I do all my podcasts, because I hate to be wrong on, a lot of things as I'm talking about them. But that's the story of Bonnie Lee Scott. And it just pains me that this guy only served 11 years. 11. For what he did to her. And left her there for and then 3 weeks later came back and decapitated her. It's just horrible. So I want to thank everybody for your support. I do my best to get an episode out every weekend. And with the holidays coming, it's kind of difficult, but I do have a list of them. If anybody has any suggestions, you can email me, kellyscoffeecrime@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram, Kelly's Coffee Crime Chat. And then I have a Facebook page private group, which is Kelly's Coffee and Crime Chat, just like the podcast title. So I'll put everything in the show notes. I'm going to put the Java Mama, and I'm going to put, I'm going to try to remember to list the name of the book in the show notes. And I'm trying to think of, I usually finish my podcasts, as a lot of people know, I usually finish them with something I've seen recently on TV or streaming channel or something like that. And I just watched Exorcist Believer on Peacock. It's okay. In my opinion, it was one of those I watched and then I kind of forgot I watched it. Like, it didn't stay in my head, basically. But I did like the ending. There was a little surprise at the end. If anybody has seen the movie, they know what I'm talking about. I was like, whoa. But it was just a nice little surprise. It wasn't a plot twist or anything. It was just a nice little surprise that happened at the very end of it. So, but if anybody's seen it, let me know what you think of this. I did like the fact that it wasn't gory. I like the fact that it wasn't horribly overdone. Like the vulgarity and stuff in the first one, I mean, I can watch it, but it really just, man, they just did so much in that movie. And there were some gross parts and there was a couple kind of goryish parts, but not like, I don't know. It didn't bother me as much. But there were parts in it I really did not like. I didn't like, now Ellen Burstyn comes back. who's the mother in the original, and something happened to her in it I didn't like. She lives. I mean, nothing happened. She doesn't get killed, but I didn't like that. I'm like, why did they do that? There were just parts in it that I don't know. It just did not fit together, or I don't know. It was okay. I was actually surprised that it was directed by David Gordon Green, who did the new Halloween movies. Really, because I loved the new Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. I liked both of them. I know a lot of people didn't like Halloween Kills. I did. I wasn't crazy about the third one, Halloween Ends, but I liked it enough to where I can watch all three of them. I expected more though on that on the last one, but yeah, David Gordon Green is the one who does The Exorcist Believer, and I don't know. I was just kind of disappointed in it. I did watch another movie on Peacock called Genie, which is a Peacock original with Melissa McCarthy. That's a cute one. It's not one, again, it's not one that stays in my head. It's not one that I cracked up laughing and over and was talking about it to everybody, but it was just a cute movie to watch. It was, for around the holidays, I thought it was cute. So those are my two movies I watched over the weekend. And, getting a lot of Christmas movies. I'm going to start putting in Christmas Vacation. I watch that every year. I watch Scrooged with Bill Murray. I watch all kinds of Christmas movies. Medea's Christmas. I love that. So, that's all for today. I wanted to just get this out for early access, and it will appear on the podcast on Friday. So you can listen on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and weekend, and a wonderful Christmas season, and I will see you next time.